Welcome to the I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. I'm author and speaker Carrie Severson. In each episode, I'll share stories and tips from my experience with caregiving and advocacy through my husband's cancer journey. Hi, welcome back to I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. This is episode 6, and I appreciate you being here. I hope that you're enjoying this podcast, what I'm sharing. I hope it's resonating. You know, I've been in the storytelling space for 30 years, and podcasting is different, obviously. When you're a writer and you put something out into the world on a big platform, usually writers will have some people contact them out of the blue, listeners. Storytelling is really an invite for the other person receiving it to share their side of the story or, their experience. When you're podcasting, it feels very one-sided at this point. So I would love to know if this is resonating, if you're able to take anything I'm sharing in terms of caregiving tips or burnout recovery tips and implement them into your daily life. If you could please subscribe on YouTube or on Apple or wherever you're receiving this, I would greatly appreciate it. And the reason being is because I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes started as a book, and it feels very commercial. It feels very traditional. There are 53 million family caregivers in the country, and 54% of those people are married to the person that they're caring for. 61% are women. Almost 65% of family caregivers are between the ages of 45 and 75. Our story is not singular. It is just one of millions and millions and millions. And while I know I could publish I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes, The Other Side of Cancer, I've done it before. I feel like Unapologetically Enough and the Enoughness Method were successful. They were in stores. They were in subscription boxes. We had bulk buys. We had direct buys. But this feels different. And while I am currently pitching agents and, working on the proposal, it'll all come down to platform. It always has. It's actually why I started the Unapologetic Voice House in 2018, because I got tired of hearing, your work reminds me of Glennon Doyle or it reminds me of Elizabeth Gilbert, but you don't have 1 million followers. So I'm giving this another shot, and we'll see where it goes. So if you could please subscribe, follow me, tell your friends, I would greatly appreciate it. And I am recording this on National Caregivers Day, which is Friday, February 21st, my mom's birthday. Hi, Mom. And I just want to share from me to you, from one family caregiver to another, something that I still do, even post my caregiving experience. When Gavin was in the thick of it, and I found it hard to breathe at times, I would force myself to take a cold shower. I think I've said this before, that cold therapy is my number one go-to burnout recovery tool. So much so that I will use ice rollers in between meetings. I'll stand in the kitchen first thing in the morning while my coffee is going, I'm drinking water, and I'm rubbing an ice roller on my neck. It's how I start my day. But when he was in the thick of it, for some reason, leaning into tools that I knew would support my nervous system, I had resistance to. It was almost like I was afraid to come out of the fight or flight. Like, if I find a safe space, the bottom's going to fall out. All hell's going to break loose. He's going to need to rush to the ER, and I just won't have the get up and go. That's, I think, the subconscious thing that was happening. But I would force myself to get in the shower. 30, 60 seconds, cold therapy. My process is strip, get into the shower, stand where I know it's going to hit my chest first, and then I just barely tap it on. If you've never done it before, be prepared for the water to like suck the air out of you. It'll like suck the life out of you. And then I give it like 5-6 seconds and you'll eventually scream and laugh or cry. You go through these like visceral emotions, but you really only need like 30-60 seconds. That's my number one tip. My second tip is box breathing. It's the thing that the Navy SEALs use. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. My last tip that I would do on a daily basis was, we have this wall of doors, those sliding glass doors that kind of collapse into one another. I would open that up whenever he was sleeping, and I would stand outside for 3 minutes at a time, and I would force my body to sway back and forth. And eventually I could feel my shoulders kind of relax, feel my belly relax. And it was just a couple of minutes. It doesn't stay that way for long, but those little tiny things I knew would work. Yeah. Box breathing, cold therapy, a couple minutes outside, forcing yourself to sway. It helps. So happy National Caregiving Day. So in the last episode, I talked to you about getting Gavin to the emergency room over the weekend. And then that first Monday of week 3 is when I really kind of had to tap into this deeper level, a very different variation of who I am. And I called it my spicy Viking. I invoked all of the Viking heritage, the lineage, and I was like stern, direct, discerned. I was very strong. Week 3 is when everything sort of shifted for him, because we got the long-term oxy. And by that point, he was on ibuprofen, Tylenol, oxy, gabapentin, and magic mouthwash. Plus, because he was on opioids, he also had like really strong Miramax or something. I don't remember what it was, but so a few additional tools had to come in the house. Number 1, a new whiteboard, which he totally hated, but I loved it because it felt like I could control something. But again, you can't control this freight train, but it was my attempt to control. And one whiteboard was his color-coded appointments. Chemo was in black or blue. Chemo was in blue. Radiation was in black. The blood draws were in red. And then every other appointment was in green. On a second whiteboard, we had his meds and the schedule, because we never really wanted him to ever get to the point where he was feeling glass again in his neck. He would oftentimes tell me that it felt like he was swallowing glass, but not even his own saliva. It was like glass. So we had to carefully administer all these different drugs. And he was really scared he was going to get addicted. I was scared he was going to get addicted. And that's a real thing. Like, this is something that we don't talk about, right? It's necessary. He was in so much pain. He had to have it. He wanted to take less of it, but had to have it in order to put nutrients in his body. It was this catch-22. Then on a third whiteboard, because by this point, he was losing so much weight, we were being harped on consistently every single day. They would weigh him, he would lose weight. We would get lectured on the importance of him not losing weight, because a healthy body is supportive of healing your body from chemo and radiation. And again, Gavin was consistently like, you're pumping poison into my body. If this was something that a healthy person should have, everyone would be having chemo and radiation. It was a nightmare. There was nothing about it come week 3, nothing about it that was easy, that was pleasant, even in conversation, anywhere. Everything was heightened. Everything was harder. everything was sharper, harsher. So that week, I made the decision to lean into the simple joys. We're not talking like hours of relief here. We're talking literal moments. I had to accept the fact that we were in hell. This was going to be a while. And I had to look around, take a breath, and accept small moments of joy. So what did that look like for him? What did that look like for me? For him, it was being strong enough to walk to the mailbox with me, which is 300 steps away. And then if he was super strong that day, we would go for a walk around the block. That was something that he looked forward to. And during week 3, he could still do it. For me, it was a hummingbird or the sound of sizzling butter in the pan because he was eating. A nap. At that point, I had actually started a caregiving group myself because, again, something else we don't talk about. I would love to know your feedback or your opinion on this if you're a caregiver. When it first happened, when he was first diagnosed, everyone's like, oh, you need to get into a caregiving group, caregiving support group. Okay. I did. And then I immediately had to get out because it was like, you need to be suited up like a freaking gladiator to be in here. It's the temple of doom. Everywhere you turn, no one's talking about their mental health. No one's talking about how we're taking care of ourselves. Everyone's talking about their loved one who's a patient and the severity of where they're at. And it was like horror story after horror story. So in the beginning, I would spend time in a support group and everything's online because of, germs and not exposing people to new systems and variations of whatever you have. I'd be like, Gavin, I just heard this story. Maybe this is something we should talk to the doctor about. Or head and neck cancer patients are really prone to losing their teeth. We had to meet with a dentist before he started, and the possibility of him losing function in his jaw or the ability to swallow altogether. I mean, there was so much fear. And he looked at me one day and he's like, I need you to actually not tell me about these things. It makes it harder for me. Okay. Got it. I still needed support. And so I actually turned to our church to look for support and was shocked that there wasn't one. So I created it myself. And there was just a couple of us in it. So come week 3, we would meet weekly online, and a song that somebody would recommend or, a funny meme or a joke, those things were like my simple joys. And we would send text messages to one another, just kind of lift each other up and keep each other supported. They're little pockets of relief. I looked for it. I looked for that pretty consistently. By this point, he had developed this side effect from radiation, a couple of different things. It's really common for folks in radiation to get burns. Gavin was an extreme case. His radiologist used that term, extreme. By week 3, he had developed not just burn marks on his face and his neck, inside his throat, down his throat, obviously. And so he had developed these pockets of, blisters and blood clots, and it was just disgusting. But he had also developed, there's an actual term for it. It was like ropes of mucus, where they would get caught in his throat, windpipe, and he would choke. He sounded like he was drowning. And he would lean over the sink or the bucket or just, outside and have to pull a rope of mucus out of his mouth. I mean, it was just the sound of him choking made my skin crawl and my breath catch in my chest. And there was nothing I could really do to help him other than be close to him, but not super close to him, because it would just go everywhere. And a lot of times when he was coughing up and choking, tons of blood would come up too. It was wild. And it wasn't just when he was in pain. It's when he was sleeping, he'd be standing up to the point where he was so scared. He was so scared to fall asleep. He was so scared he was going to choke to death. He would lean himself up against a counter and nudge himself like in between, back up against the counter and then up against the fridge. So he had some support, and he would fall asleep standing up just in case he started choking. It was very challenging. He's actually blocked a lot of this out. We started going to this neighborhood Bible study, and in a recent conversation, we were talking about how we share our faith and how we talk about our relationship with God. And I've always been somebody, I grew up in the church. I grew up Catholic. Christian. I go to a non-denominational church here in Arizona. In my books, I'll write "Dear God" a lot, but I'm not. I'm not out here like sharing gospel messages or leading conversations about the Bible, because I'm still learning about it. But Gavin is a baby Christian. I'll talk about this next episode, his relationship with God, because it's beautiful and it's brilliant and it's inspiring. But Gavin used to walk around the hospital. He would see somebody that was obviously hurting, and he'd be like, "God loves you. Don't forget to love yourself." He doesn't remember doing that. He doesn't remember falling asleep standing up. He doesn't remember choking on ropes of mucus. He doesn't remember spitting up so much blood that like our walls were covered and specks of blood everywhere. And he doesn't remember any of it. And I was thinking today, actually, as I was preparing to do this, I think that's okay. I remember, and I'm in therapy. I start EMDR soon, actually. But I think it's okay that he doesn't remember. Curious if the person that you're caring for has blocked any of this out. Maybe he blocked it out subconsciously, or he blocked it out. He doesn't remember it because he was on so many drugs. The long-term oxy was just the first one. Eventually, he was on a short-term oxy, fentanyl, and then when he was hospitalized, which I'll talk about in another episode, he was in the hospital for 8 days. He was on something 10 times more potent than morphine. He doesn't remember any of that. I do, though. And I'm sure the 53 million family caregivers can relate to that. The heaviness we carry, the trauma that this created, and the healing that has to happen, and the long-term road that we're on. Our journey as caregivers doesn't stop when the patient stops going to treatment. Next week, I'm going to lean into what happened to my faith when Gavin was diagnosed and what happened to his. Thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate you. I would really appreciate your feedback on who you are, how this is going for you, if you're enjoying this, the caregiving tips that I'm providing you. I hope they're supportive. If you have a caregiver in your life, please pass this on to them. Let them know that I understand them, I see them, I support them, I love them. And if you are a caregiver, please remember it's okay to have somebody else do the dishes. Until next time.